comments that you all have on those. So I wanted to start out by recognizing the hard work of the Woodford County Road Department. And you can see that through February 8th that we have outlined overtime worked hours for each member of the department. And so one of the things that happened as soon as the emergency began is that when they went out on Saturday, that basically they were permitted to work nonstop until we got it done, and they did get it done. So that's our overtime expenses. The other thing that we did at the beginning of the ice storm, once the emergency was declared, was we employed some of our contractors that we used in the flood removal. So we knew that Parks Landscaping and Matt Parks and his team had the ability. They worked with us. They were, we already had all of their files and W-9s and all the requisite things for a contractor to get them going. So we put them to work early on in the emergency. And so those individuals brought their own skid steers and bobcats, and we agreed upon a rate of $125 per hour. That's an individual and a machine. They also had trucks with plows and salt spreaders on those machines, and basically, though, that it was a operator and a bobcat. And let me see here. So I know that some of the folks that worked with Mr. Parks were Jason Higgins, Greg Walls, Alex Portwood, Joseph Brown, Dylan Reynolds, and Trevor Skipper. And both Greg Walls and Trevor Skipper are Woodford County firefighters, and they joined Matt Parks' team. Trevor Skipper also worked for us in the flood debris removal effort. So we also employed Justin Siraji and his company. Again, that's another company that did a lot of great work for us during the flood debris removal. In fact, Justin Siraji and his team donated 2 days of work for the flood debris removal. And so we bought them back, and Justin Siraji, Chad Ott, Daniel Chisholm, Wes Barnes, Derek Poore, and Carson Coy were the folks. And again, they were operators and skid steers. And, one of the specific areas where they worked was Stonegate. They dug out all of Stonegate and did a really great job. We also had the opportunity to hire Hammond's Landscaping, and this company was one that had trucks with plows and salt spreaders. And because we had given that equipment rate to the bobcats and operators, we did that as well. And I can tell you all, and Squire Varner, you probably know this, but that is much lower than you could rent a plow truck and a salt spreader for $125 an hour.
Fair, always.
Yes, sir.
I had a nephew in that same business, and that's right in line with all.
I think in Lexington they're paying about $4.25 an hour right now just to get them out there working.
Here, our community here, that was a good rate. So.
Thank you, Squire Varner. I will note that they did bring in a big plow truck from Hammond's. They had one large plow truck like our big plow trucks, and we agreed to a $200 per hour rate with them. But as you can see, we incurred $127,627.50 in total contract labor expended, which is a significant amount. But I will say that it was integral for what we dealt with in the snowstorm to have that ability to use contractors. So our team did a really great job at the road department, but they wouldn't have been able to be pulled off and done skid steers and other equipment. We were able to run large equipment like a road grader, use our big loader, use some other big equipment. But in the middle of the first week, right after our fiscal court meeting, some of our crews started going down with the flu, which was a tremendous challenge. And that's when we brought on Hammonds and their team. But I'd say some of those guys just had their own truck, and they just came to the lot, got in their truck, and left without dealing with people and drove with the flu. So we really appreciate folks like Blake Hacker did that. Tremendous effort by them. So some other expenses that we incurred that are not on this sheet. So we did operate the warming centers, and Director Chandler can help me with this as well, but we worked with Bluegrass Community Action to pay their personnel to staff that during the days and during the business hours that they could. And then folks like Deputy EM Director Russ Crabtree worked overnight shifts and stayed up all night at the senior center manning that by himself, which is, they give Russ a big round of applause and appreciation, because that's not easy to do. It's not easy, and it wasn't easy to get people to volunteer to do that, and he did that. Russ also stayed overnight at Fallen Springs when we had the overnight warming shelter, as did Sheriff's Office deputies and Versailles PD personnel, which was a huge help. But we will have expenses for the Bluegrass Community Action personnel. And Director Chandler, I don't know if you have those numbers that you could share with the committee?
We're still waiting on an invoice from them, Judge.
Okay. What we also did as a measure to ensure with the frigid temperatures that we had a emergency warming center and overnight shelter, we agreed and contracted with Living Grace and the station to pay their personnel to stay overnight. I don't recall which night that started, but essentially they were having trouble getting volunteers and being able to staff it because of the length and how many days we were going on end of freezing temperatures. So we did enter into a emergency contract with them to pay their personnel to keep it open all night. So that's our warming centers and our warming stations. And then we also used fiscal court employees. I want to thank Amanda Centers at the deputy clerk for the county clerk's office. She took the emergency hotline, and so did Lisa Gaines, who is our assistant HR and treasurer. She took the emergency hotline and answered it 24/7, had it on overnight. And so one of the things that you all see in the resolution for time, so for those individuals that were working while the buildings and facilities were closed, we're giving them an hour-for-hour paid leave for that, if that resolution is adopted and passed. And so, as you all know, we worked where we were closed Monday and Tuesday of the first week of the storm. We were on a delay Wednesday, approved by the fiscal court in our Tuesday night meeting. We were on a delay Thursday and Friday. And so that amounts to 2 8-hour days, and then 1 3-hour morning, and then 2 2-hour mornings. So for the road department, for EMS, for maintenance, for detention center, for all those agencies, sheriff's office, for all those agencies that worked while we were closed, they basically would get paid leave as a matter of equity, basically, because all the other county employees who were not in the office still get their pay for those days. So again, Amanda Centers, Lisa Gaines would apply to them. And we've worked out either paid leave arrangements with them or additional pay for them for the hours that they worked. Director Chandler, are there other expenses that you're aware of that we occurred that we can share with the committee?
Judge, statewide, we're approaching this being a $46 million disaster. You know, a lot of co-op utilities, just general infrastructure damage, snow and ice removal. We're currently tracking around 388,000, and that's not exclusively fiscal court. You know, the city of Versailles, all the eligible public assistance entities, right? So the city of Midway's contractual, city of Versailles, not just the utilities, but also the fire department. Payroll drops tomorrow, so we'll have a better sense of overtime for like our ambulance service where we upstaffed, putting a third person on the crews for several shifts. To make sure that we could move the patients through the snow when the stretchers don't work. I know the sheriff's office had some overtime associated with some prescription deliveries and transports of essential healthcare personnel. So with payroll dropping tomorrow, some of those things will be a little more clear than they are now. So we should have a better report in time for the next fiscal court meeting and possibly sooner than that.
Thank you, Director Chandler, and that's a good point. You know, we had overtime with maintenance personnel. Director Wade and his team put in exceptional amount of additional hours. When we did have some of our guys dealing with health issues, that Tim Cox and Rick Hartley got in plow trucks and drove. That's one of the cross department arrangements that we have. When we hired Tim Cox, he's a CDL driver. Rick Hartley is an exceptional driver and equipment operator. And if you all remember, Rick Hartley started at road and moved to maintenance, and we've kept them as resources for the road department, which is a huge help. It's a really huge help to have folks that can just pick up routes and trucks and go and help pick up the slack. So,
Judge,
yes,
I didn't
please.
intentionally omit. I think there was some rental equipment that was utilized from another project that might ultimately get billed to the disaster and not. I know the road department had some stuff out there in the parks department. So, you know, Parks and Rec is an eligible entity, so their expenses, if they had a Bobcat that was in use for snow and ice removal, that could be charged to the disaster, even though the invoice gets paid from the same place. So,
Yes, and I can speak to that. The Parks and Recreation was renting a Bobcat with tracks for the ability to remove the topsoil from the softball and baseball fields, and eventually we'll get to the practice field, the youth football practice field. And the road department's done a tremendous job on that project. It started out that they needed to take off 2 inches of dirt, and then we were starting to go into like 6 feet of dirt. I mean, it really became a huge project. But that's just for your frame of reference. It's for a rental of a track Bobcat, it's about $6,000 a week. I think that's right, $6,000 a week. And so we had that on rental for those projects, and I say we, that's Parks and Recreation's responsibility through the Parks project, but then they were able to then use that. I know Parks and Rec used it definitely for their parking lot. But again, if you look at $125 for an operator and a skid steer, and we're getting that, it's a great deal.
I also want to add that we did have some mutual aid support from other counties. One of the things that made this a challenge is, you know, normally through the statewide mutual aid agreement that the court approved sometime in 2025, we could have called on Jessamine County or Franklin County or Mercer County for some assistance, but they were in the same boat that we were, so they weren't available. We were able to utilize some shelter resources from Jessamine County, when we experienced the power outage that accounted for about 10% of our county's population. Instead of us having to rush out and buy some cots and things, we were able to get that from a neighboring community for some labor expense. So, money is saved where money can be saved. And mutual aid is a way to do that.
And we really appreciate that from Jessamine County and cultivating those relationships. And, one of the things that the flood of April of last year really did was it hardened our preparation to the point where there was no flinching in hiring contractors. There was no flinching in opening warming centers. There was no flinching in turning on the hotline and activating all of the preparations. Whereas, before we might have had to look for contractors and maybe talk to folks. And so we had those relationships, and it was a big, big help. Thank you, Director Chandler. So I'd open up the floor for the committee for any questions or comments on the ice storm expenses. One thing that I'll also share is that in looking at our preliminary work with our budget, at $127,000 seems like a lot of money, and it is. However, we are on track to be able to absorb that in the current budget with our current amount of expenses at the level they are, without having to go into reserves. Now, clearly, we would go into reserve to transfer for paying different line items and things like that as we go forward. This is also an emergency, so we've created different accounts to accommodate this, but the level of spending in the current budget is not such that this expenditure and even the entire emergency expenses themselves would be something that would cause us to ultimately spend over the budget we've allotted for this fiscal year. You mind to turn on your mic, Squire Carl?
On this one total, we brought the 127,627.50 plus the 2769. Those two together equal 154. What's that 130, 190, 150 on there?
It's just somewhere in this.
Okay, it wasn't,
Yeah.
okay.
That should be 127,627.
Okay.
Just making
Yeah.
sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. So another reason that was a little off is because you all will recall that we hired a part-time employee prior to the storm, and then we just factored his hours in as contract, but he was not contract, he was part-time labor. So other questions or comments regarding the ice storm expenses? I would recommend or make a motion to the fiscal court that that we approve of all ice storm expenses on the bill list and pay any ice storm expenses related thereto. Motion by Squire Carl, second by Squire Varner. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you all. So now I'd like to turn to the budget timeline. I'll give you that, Jordan. So I would let you all know that the budget work of the fiscal court has already commenced. We've been talking to our agencies and partners and all those that have a role in the budget and the budget process. We've had communications with them about getting their information in. We are working on the budget master spreadsheet already. We are preparing the personnel expenses, all while Madam Treasurer works through another audit. And but the budget process has begun, and this is informally our first meeting of the budget for the 2026 timeline. So you all will see in the tentative schedule, and again, I reserve the right, the Budget Finance Committees reserve the right to have additional meetings, special meetings, amend this if something is moving or changes in a different way. But we'll have our Budget and Finance Committees before each fiscal court meeting from here until May. That our next meeting will be Tuesday, February the 21st, or 24th, excuse me. And in a rare year, Tuesday, February 10th and Tuesday, February 21st, and it's also Tuesday, March 10th and Tuesday, March 24th. I don't know if that's happened like that before. But those will all be Budget and Finance Committee meetings. I've asked all departments and agencies to begin working on their budget. And the process that we've had in the past, which is the one we will follow this time, which I think is successful, is that we will share drafts of budgets with the fiscal court as they come in. It's a rolling basis. So if you submit your budget draft, then it's not like in the past where the treasurer and I would meet with them and we review that and kick things out. You as a fiscal court get to see that firsthand up front. Certainly, we have conversations with our departments and agencies, and we know of the big ticket expenses and things like that, and we may have some input on that prior to you seeing that, but basically that is the goal. And I can report that a lot of our departments and agencies are already working on their budget preparation. April 1st is the detention center budget's statutory and annual due date. So we'll receive the jail budget then. Following that, April 14th and 28th will be Budget and Finance Committees. When I say that things may change or shift, we could have committees of the whole earlier if we need to include the full fiscal court on some appropriation matters or other matters. May 1st, I believe that's a Friday. That will be when you as a fiscal court see the first draft of the budget, as you normally would. And of course, Mr. County Attorney, I believe we had to have the salaries for the county attorney's office, and the coroner's office, and the magistrates all therein.
I think that's by the first Monday in May, Judge, and thank you for pointing that out. I was going to point that out. Yes, you all will need to establish what the salary will be for magistrates, other than Squire Brown, and for the county attorney, not me, but set that by the first Monday in May, and you have leave to basically just leave it the way it is, to go up, to go down, because this is being set for the next term. So you need to be thinking about that.
So that's the May timeline. I work with the treasurer and the court clerk for our public hearing on county road aid for sure. We may or may not even have any LGA funds. We shouldn't, according to the treasurer, so that would clearly necessitate no reason to hold that LGA fund hearing, but that'll be to be determined on the date for that, but it'll be after May 1st. And then May 12th will definitely be a committee of the whole to go over the budget, and the fiscal court will have the opportunity to make recommendations thereon. I have tentatively set the committee of the whole in the first reading of the budget on May 26th. So if we have the second meeting in May, we have the first reading of the budget. That'll give us enough time to send it to DLG, have it approved, get it back by the second reading, which would be Tuesday, June 23rd. And that should be plenty of time for that. One thing that I would note is that basically between May 1st and May 26th, I think as everyone knows, that'd be the final time to amend the budget. There can be no substantive amendments to the budget post first reading. So that is the tentative Woodford County Fiscal Court budget timeline.
Judge?
Yes, Mr. County Attorney.
And I know it's always based on what the ultimate decision is in the budget you present, but I know historically you look at the CPI. What is?
I believe the CPI is 2.7 this year.
Okay. And for those of us who have to submit for our staff, and understanding again, it's going to be based on what ultimately is decided by the court, but okay, thank you.
I'll confirm that.
All right.
That'll help get the budget request to you sooner.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Yes, Squire Varner.
Judge, can I offer up on that, the 2 meetings in April?
Yes.
Can we put those as committee of the whole? just because as we're progressing through this, there's questions and as we work through it.
So, I'm open to that, but the process that we've always had as a fiscal court is that any member of the fiscal court can participate in committees following the input and participation of the committee members. So there is the ability for all members of the fiscal court to participate. I'm not sure that having a committee of the whole would be totally different. One of the reasons that the committee of the wholes are definitely needed for the first reading and those things is to ratify any changes and things like that. And I think there could be some decision points in April and May, but again, that would be recommended by the Budget Finance Committee to the fiscal court during the meeting, and they would get to act. You would get to act.
That'd be fine, as long as we're included, because I know working through the budget, it's gonna be presented to fiscal court on May 1st. If there's anything we need to talk over, just wanted everybody to be included.
Well, and so I'd reiterate that the current policy of all committee meetings are that fiscal court members have the ability to participate.
Thank you.
And that's never changed, so, just so folks know. But I will be extra diligent, and if we need to change that due to a discussion or a decision point, then we can always call a committee of the whole.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Squire Barney. Other questions or comments? Then, if there's no objection, I would just go over a few fiscal matters as other matters during the agenda. We will look at the amended Conservation District budget. The treasurer will have that. I don't think there's any need to discuss that here, but it's just a matter related to budget that we will look at. The paid leave policy, obviously paid leave does have a financial impact on the budget. We're paying for leave, although ultimately it's something that is absorbed in our budget through payroll and policy. But does anybody have any questions on the resolution as it's proposed? Seeing none. And does anybody have any on the Budget Finance Committee, any question on any of the claims or the bills? I would note that we do have the email approval of the claim from Mr. Brian Berger in the amount of $600 for the firewood for the Woodford County Road Department. That's because they heat the shop with a stove, and we needed some additional firewood, not really to get us through this event, but when the event's over, that we didn't have to be scrambling for firewood. But we did go through a lot of firewood with that temperatures.
That's salt, how do we do?
We did really great on salt. The road supervisor and Gail Smith will be here. We literally got to the point where I think we had about 50 tons left in the barns, and then we got replenished from our salt order. And so it came in right at the perfect time, which was the second Monday of the event. But salt is not cheap, and we did have to buy more salt. But we have that on our contract. We will ratify the email approval of Parks Landscaping for the snow and ice removal and the PNC Bank claim for the Sheriff's Office. Are there any questions on any of those claims or ratifications as they come presented to the court? Seeing none. The coroner has communicated to me that they need to purchase a cot. That amount is $5,249.30. I recommended that be recommended to the fiscal court for approval. So is there a recommendation from the Budget and Finance Committee to recommend that to the full fiscal court for approval?
So moved to
Motion by Squire Varner. Second by Squire Taylor. So my understanding is the coroner will take the old cot, surplus that to the solid waste and recycling center once she receives the new cot. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor, please vote and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that motion carries. So we'll recommend that to the fiscal court. Again, those are all the financial matters for fiscal court. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything related to finances on the agenda? Seeing none. I do believe, Madam Treasurer, we have received the CASA request. They've already sent in their request for the CASA appropriation, which we receive each year. I think we have them coming to maybe the first meeting in March for a presentation. That being all the budget and finance matters that I have, does anybody have any questions or anything additional before we adjourn? Seeing none, I will deem this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee adjourned. We will reconvene in fiscal court at 5:30. Thank you all.